Assalamu alaikum, bari on. Kaya ngalo kontong, I told ngalo kontong. Kaya, and in kacha damudan commento, but for some reason I was getting a lot of calls coming in, and then I was just rushing home. So, I think we would just retake it and have a conversation on matters as they relate to who killed the cops. So, or our focus on this conversation today is on the Gambia Armed Forces. Now, the Gambia Armed Forces, the police, and of course, leading to the conclusion of this case, that is very evident to us that the prosecution had put nothing, absolutely nothing, had presented absolutely nothing in the case. So, Kumimbe Onyama, we want to really conclude this whole who killed the cops today, because we're getting into the Ramadan, and it's very clear that Hussein Obojang and Ami's next appearance in court would be on the 27th, which will already be in the Ramadan, and them appearing on the 27th would mean that the judge still have prerogative to give any date as he deemed fit for the judgment. So that means the judgment is entirely dependent on the judge. So that is not on the prosecution, it's not on the defense, and it's not on you and I. So therefore, the judge will determine it as he feels like. But that being said, the most important thing in today's conversation is to look at the army and its potential culpability in this whole case. Because, ntolte sojar kunda sorala na bankoka. Meneka bara tapale yala. Eka bara tilimbali yala. Eka bara tuanyata nola. So, nyemo kula de mi yalonko, of course, if you're in there, you might be very skeptical of speaking about them outright. But, somebody got to. And somebody got to, got that courage to tell the people the facts as they appear before you. Without any fear of contradiction or whatever that there might be. Now, to take you back, a couple of things we've successfully done. Already, it is very clear that Hussein and his sister, no matter what, as sick or as insane as a judge would be, you cannot tell me that the prosecution have presented any single evidence against these young people, or this young man, and of course his lactating sister. Min kweta wala nyinteko. Police all the control ko sino rebelolity, and then we have successfully debunked, and of course every Gambian knew that woman get tonyati. But me tolobolo fola obeni Gambian kolo tema. Nyim police killing all the konyako abedo kola Brikama area council, and molbe alon nako sen na namando ko ke Brikama area council. Me tolobolo fola obeni Gambian kolo tema. Nyumo killing all the control he was paid to kill, which they could not actually show us any evidence of him being paid by anyone who paid him the money he was paid. But that means that the government had just lied about this young man. Now, to claim that he was the guy in hoodie, and the guy in hoodie came out and we could tell this is the guy in hoodie and this is Hussein, and they're completely different. Now, but today the conversation is going to be based on, the three military witnesses, the ballistic examination, and of course the area in which this particular incident happened. Now, one thing we must focus on is that Sukuta traffic light is in close proximity to the residence of the chief of defense staff. Now, these three military witnesses who claim that they were coming from Palmarima, and they were coming from Palmarima together, not that they were coming, in different cars or, of course, in isolation of each other. No, they were all together and coming from Palmarima together, as they claim. That is their claim. But what we have uncovered is that these three military personnel were calling each other at the period or at the moment of this incident. Now, people who claim to be coming from, Palmarima together, and of course being in the same vehicle, cannot at the same time be calling each other. We know that's not correct. That's not right. That is something that did not add up in that script. So you and I cannot be sitting here and at the same time calling each other. Now, why they did lie, that is dependent on them. But the important thing here would be, why Sukuta traffic light? And why not Brufut, Ghana Town, or why not between Brufut and Tanje, where we have paramilitary bases, if they claim that Hussein Obojang actually did kill the cops? Because it would be easier for somebody who could expertly kill police officers in the way the person did to actually go to a location that is very remote, isolated, and uneasy to be found. But this person did not do that. Instead, he went to Sukuta traffic light. And then if you look at the geography of Sukuta traffic light, it is in close proximity to the residence of the head of the army. Now, why am I pinning it at the head of the army? We will get to that, because the head of the army cannot in totality be left out of this case, because it is under his watch that the army did a ballistic examination. And this ballistic examination we will actually put on the table, and people would make their analysis and their conclusions on it. But before we get to that, the important thing would be, there are three things that are potentially possible. Now, these three military men who claim that they were coming from Palmarima, coincidentally, this incident happened in their presence. These three military officers who were coming from Palmarima, coincidentally, were calling each other. These three military officers who came from Palmarima, coincidentally, met a vehicle that belongs to a police officer that is claimed to be the vehicle of the murderer. These three military witnesses claim that they did not know among themselves who the senior man was. It is a coincidence that this happened in their presence. It is a coincidence that the vehicle that it was said to belong to the murderer belongs to a police officer. It's a coincidence. It is a coincidence that the UDP was complaining about Pate Jallo and another Pate Jallo was killed. It's a coincidence. It is a coincidence that Hussein Obojang is said to be one person who works in a UDP-led, area council. That's a coincidence. Or it's a mistaken identity. It is a mistake that the regime told us that he's a rebel. Oh, let's just take it as that's a mistake. Is it also a mistake that the regime told us that he works in Brikama Area Council? Is it also a mistake that the regime told us that he was paid to kill, yet they cannot actually give us any traces of the person who paid him or where the money was and how much he was paid? It is equally, a mistake that the audio in which they said he confessed to killing, that they came to court to lie that the audio is lost. That's a mistake. Indeed, it's a mistake that the DPP said that the audio is lost, and Mama said that I actually removed my SIM card in contradictory statements. That is also just a mistake. It is just a coincidence that a political party talked about, cops being brutalizing their people, and then another cop bearing the same name got killed. That's a coincidence, Gambia. This is what you want us to believe, and this is what you want to tell me. Yes, I agree, it's a coincidence. But one thing that is not a coincidence is that the shoes you claim you met at the traffic light belonging to Hussein Obojang was brought to him in court to wear, and they did not feed him. That's also a mistake, isn't it? Here is where I want to connect the dots. 3 military officers were the witnesses. These are gun experts, people who can kill at any second. It is not just ordinary people who are actually commuting in that vicinity were not the witnesses, but it is military men who were witnesses. But again, the vehicle they told us that belongs to Hussein Obojang, another coincidence, all of a sudden it belongs to a police officer. What was the police officer's vehicle doing there? One, What were these 3 military men doing there? 2, why is it not ordinary citizens, civilians who would have testified if they were in that vicinity? Why just the military officers? 3, and then the 4th is, why only just these 3 military officers were pursuing this gunman when other people could have done so? Because if they were coming from Palmarima without military uniform, nobody would know that they are military officers. Then other people would have followed them to pursue this particular person, but that did not happen. It was only the 3 of them pursuing this gunman. How? Why? Does that make any sense to you? So I will put the military under scrutiny. Because we are not dummies. That an incident that involved somebody expertly killing 2 officers and injuring 1 must be done by somebody who is a gun mastermind. But then flip it again, the only witnesses to the crime were military experts. And then the incident happened within the locality or the vicinity of the residence of the chief of defense staff. And to add salt to the injury, the ballistic examination done by the military was bogus. And then I actually take full responsibility of my statements. The credibility of the military witnesses is just questionable. And of course, the validity of the, whatever they call it, the ballistic examination is highly questionable. Then why will the military leadership get itself into such lies and propaganda if it knows nothing about it? Now, that tells you one thing. The military must take full responsibility for the lies, the deceit, and the manipulation of its 3 military men who claim to be witnesses in this case, who among themselves could not tell who the senior person was, but who claimed that they got battle shock. But in the middle of that battle shock, you are still pursuing a gunman who has the ability to kill you at every second after killing 3 people or 2 people and injuring 1. I did not need to be a soldier to know that. I did not even need to be a Boy Scout to know that when you have battle shock, you don't pursue the enemy. And when we say soldier role, we are not referring to the army as a whole. We are referring to these 3 military witnesses and, of course, the military leadership. Why did I say the military knows something about the killing of the cops? Is that the 3 military witnesses claim that when this person shot these 2 and, of course, injuring 1, they started pursuing him. But you are pursuing somebody who is on the run after killing 2 people and, of course, injuring 1. But how do you pursue somebody you cannot tell if he wears a red shirt or a white shirt? Because before you pursue somebody, you must have, that visibility that you could see that it is this person, and you start pursuing them, because Sukuta traffic light is not an isolated environment, because it's an environment where you would see multiple people and multiple footprints at any given time. Therefore, the person that would have killed the cops would have been very visible to these 3 military witnesses, and they could tell that for more koyola made, for more fingola made, for more jangola made, ka koyola dum, 5 half dum, they would have known that. Now, even whereas they did not know that, they said they were pursuing this gunman, and then while pursuing him, he turns around and fires at them, and they take cover on fence lines. Now, fence solman can come, they are crooked like this. No. Fence hole, they are straight. So ni benta nyim fence do jan ni be futala fence do wala Johnson do foi koban tano another fence to. Ninyi mo mote mi alonko, his intention is to kill you, who had expertly just killed 2 people and, of course, injuring 1, because janibe mo fula fanola, by the time you fire 1, know that there is motion, people would move. Now, for you to fire 2 and kill again, and fire 3 and still hit the target, you must be a gun mastermind. Now, for you who had no gun, you had no weapon, you had nothing in your hands to pursue this particular person, you said that you were taking cover on fence line. Moro, ebe fence follow bana, jani be follow nyong bana, he knows you are pursuing him, abe falal. Bare obe mankede. They said. You think you are talking to dummies because you could take our family members and put them in jail. You can hide every traceable evidence, but you cannot hide our heads, because we would think and connect the dots and tell you how criminal the system in the Gambia is, including the Gambia Armed Forces and its leadership, its culpability in the matters as they relate to the killing of the cops. We cannot just focus on the police and leave the armed forces in it. Because the whole point is that your 3 military witnesses claim that while they were pursuing this gunman, he was turning and firing at them. So, ning America tona keta bung wore nyaka o marijel. So, ita nyaka momin jabe ton la pur ke bung for you to take cover on a fence line. But ita ta phone la foide naka koyolo dum fight naka fingola dum. How is that possible? Somebody that I could see and he turns around trying to fire at me. Now, when he turns to try to fire at me, how do you know that he's even having a gun to try to... So, if you could see the gun, but you cannot even tell his shirt's color. Let's be honest to each other, man. The young man could actually languish in jail for almost like 3 Ramadans. You know, that's normal. That's okay. Because I know the young man is okay. Because that's our responsibility to make sure that the young man is okay. And we would do that to the best of our ability. Even though he can be incarcerated in those terrible jail conditions in the Gambia, we respect that. But what we do know is that you cannot shut us up because we got to speak the facts. And we will not just look at it from one side and then conclude that, oh no, you know, it's possible. Dole kamin fo wala nyinte ko atenda mama nke Gambian or the why him. It must be somebody because the probability is that it must be a Gambian. Either it's Usainu or another person, it must be a Gambian. So the whole point is that, Kafoko, you know, those are just crude mentalities because the whole point is that it must be an individual. And then anybody has the ability to be that probable person who could be picked among the lot and of course be framed in the way they did. Both in the police and the Gambia Armed Forces. Because komantono njankajale ikamolo tumi jan kula mini yalon ko ibulumedu isimedong ikamolo fintindi alda malo kona jan to come and testify and lie against them in court so that they can be incarcerated on those false allegations. Because the criminal justice system of this country was built on false allegations and of course prosecuting people on lies and deceit and of course jailing them on those lies and deceit. Ntamafo nga moya tollala nal nyondol min yalon ko nyaton kayal kala woto at the TRRC that they use some of their own men to come and actually allege and lie against them in court so that they can incarcerate them. So now we would actually put this under the microscope. People who claim that the person who shot 2 people and killed them, those are 2 bullets already, shot another person, the third, and wounded that person, that's 3, and of course fired almost 4 to 5 in the sky, and at the same time was firing at the 3 military people who were pursuing him. You don't need to go to school to know that mathematically that cannot equate to 3 bullets. So who did the ballistic examination in the army? That questions the validity of the ballistic examination of the armed forces. So why will the army lie in its ballistic examination? Because the whole point now becomes that the army's ballistic examiner contradicts the army's 3 witnesses. So why is the army contradicting each other? When we say the army, we are not really talking to the institution as in its entirety. We are talking about these 3 personnel plus the person who actually did the ballistic examination. Because he did the ballistic examination in the name of the Gambia Armed Forces and of course submitted it in the name of the Gambia Armed Forces. Therefore, the Gambia Armed Forces bears the responsibility of that ballistic examination report. But this report claims that only 3 bullets came out of this gun. But 3 other military officers claim that he killed 2 people, injuring 1, 3 bullets, and of course was firing at them and firing in the sky. How can that be 3 bullets? The whole point is that the 3 military officers would have been there to make sure that the mastermind who killed these persons actually escapes, and they pretend to be civilians in the midst of the people so that if in case the crowd try to capture this person, they will help him to escape. Bandi ola ko ka sara kunda sila nyindo benala bela ba ko sunyala dol benala sache to le amite amena ko kanita ma ko la pour kanyin sumo mata iba mutala kide bukarabato be be jenkel re ba bula la ba kanala ya fanke ko iba ba ende kanne e tolle be ku keleng mo le nyama ma nyin dunya ko no silang. Again, all of these things they kept telling us and want us to believe that they are coincidence. Itolle kontolio ko useno bo jamu rebeloleti. Yala womanke kusotorinde. Itolle murunte konya be do kola brikame area council wanten kusotorinde. Kom molle a jo bare jori kodi man finti jori la man finti ku man finti mi ya watandi. Bare itolle nyu masa kunda kirunga murunta kodange they give 1 million to Mama Jabi who claimed that Useno Bojang confessed to her about the killing of the cops, and she got an incriminating audio that the guy confessed in, but this audio they came to court and claimed that the audio is lost. So the army got to tell us why 3 of its men lied that much. and why they're putting the credibility of the armed forces into jeopardy. This is something that we need to ask each other. And every military personnel in the Gambia knows that something did not go right here. They will not talk about it because that's what the army is known for. But they know very well, just like many years ago, things that were been happening, they could tell what exactly happened in this case, because there is no way a military expert will tell you that I got a battle sock. At the same time, you are running after somebody who's got a gun. The simplest thing you could have done was to call, the army, whatever, phone number for reinforcement. The easiest thing you could have done was to call the police for reinforcement. But a kufula, moling anta nyonyi nkala wala. Kabira aketa. Mo kote man finti soja rol dorana finti aketa wala nyala. But what are the characteristics of this personnel? Look at the characteristics of the personnel that, bear that responsibility of witnesses. They are militarily trained. They are gun masterminds. They have the ability to kill at any second, and they are trained for it. So now, the people who depict the characteristics of the real shooter are the witnesses. But the person that I know and grew up with in the community who knows nothing about guns, knows nothing about military issues, is the one they claim is the killer. But why are the witnesses just military witnesses and not just ordinary citizens? Again, the vehicle they claim that belongs to Usainu Bojan did not now belong to him, and also did not belong to a civilian, but belongs to a police officer who has a gun. And this is the vehicle they claim belongs to the shooter. And the characteristics of the owner of the vehicle perfectly fit a shooter, because he's a police officer who has the ability to fire a gun, who actually has a gun. And he claims that he gave the vehicle to a taxi driver. But what is a taxi driver doing in a private vehicle? When the number plate of this particular vehicle was checked, it was noticed and realized that it did not belong to any taxi driver. It actually belongs to a serving police officer who is an orderly to a particular, governor, and who has a pistol with him, but claims that, of course, the vehicle was with a taxi driver. You see all the flimsy excuses the regime continues to give. Now, the regime moved from, prosecuting Usainu to defending itself because the public were putting them under scrutiny. The same regime told us that the gun was actually found on the day of the incident, but they did not pick it until after 10 days. Moro, itala witness o koyo ko lunga minna nyinko keda wolongo lantanga kido nyintombo muna ati natal mo kido tawo bolo for after 10 days. You came to court to tell us that because it took 10 days for us to pick the gun, it cannot be subjected to DNA because it was exposed to sunlight and rain. And then you turn around, you see people telling you, oh, no, but I don't. You people got nothing to say, because outright it is very clear where the evil lies and where the criminals are. But because they are in power, they are in authority, they got the force and they got all the power, it will be concealed until the day that this regime will collapse, the truth would come out. And we will not shy away from speaking it, because we know that you cannot look at people's brothers and be jailing them out of lies, manipulation, and deceit. Because the whole point now becomes, UDP complained about Pate Jallo. A Pate Jallo got killed. Let's say that's a coincidence. UDP complained about Pate Jallo. They claim the government claimed the person who killed Pate Jallo is a member of the UDP. Let's say that's just a mistake. The government went further to tell us that the person who actually killed the cops works in Brikama Area Council. Let's say that's also another mistake. That he is a rebel, that's also another mistake. That he met his co-conspirators in a mosque and they provided him an escape vehicle into the thick forest of Casamas, just for him to be found on in a garage in Jululung complaining about a white person. And then you went on to arrest his sister, claiming that it was the sister that actually helped him to escape. So what exactly has the regime told us that any person could actually rely on? Gambia. No matter what you are, be careful of the next person around you. Sign on the sondako, mo kurungol ni mo jawol ninta palele benimbanko kanne bukabang. And now I actually believe that there is a single narrative prosecution and incarceration of people based on lies, deceit, and manipulation in our judicial system. Because where the government could go and bring in a witness Alaya long, kila long, at among, he doesn't know Usainu Bojang. He did not really carry this dude from one point to another. Just for him to come and claim that I actually transported Usainu, and the sister from, Brufut all the way to Jululung or all the way to Dar es Salaam within 25 minutes. Just for the court to actually establish that this guy, the date that he claimed he had transported these people, they did not actually move on that day. They moved the next day. So this particular witness definitely need to be prosecuted, because we need to probably sue this person for coming to court to lie again. Gambia fonding either ko tonya ndol after tonya la momin kana na ka ulia la wani mol kan ka ko nga kare samba nyulung kare yara fo kare fo tata la the next day. Why would you come to court to lie against people that you don't even know? But Gambia la be onyama. Because if a deputy inspector general of police could face the media and tell people that this particular person is a rebel, and of course I use codes to get him, when we went to school with him, we grew up in the same community with him, up till this day we know. So we can look him in the eye and say, but why would the deputy inspector general of police find the need out of nothing, out of no necessity to lie against somebody just like that, if the regime has nothing to do with the killing of the cops? That becomes a fundamental question that we got to ask, because you cannot just tell us that the 3 military witnesses, all they said were just lies, and then they just feel like they're just happy to come and lie against a man that they know nothing about. But again, the good thing they did is to clearly say that, oh, we did not recognize the person because we did not see the person. But even at that point, you said you cannot tell the clothing of this particular person, but you can always see the person when he turns to fire at you. And the dumbest among all is basically the watchman who claimed that he was sitting on a fence, and this person, while he was running, he just ran after him and wrestled him down. And of course, the person threw a weapon at him, and then he called his boss, and his boss told him to hide the weapon. Bara muntu mala wakera Gambia ko ngata sire na korda bunda nga moja be borkan mo mafa mo mantara bayndika mo mafa esache mo mafa kwa kulage. You don't see anybody pursuing him. Ye moja ni mboro be tambola rete wole ko bayndi in wona keta Gambia muntola, like no common sense would tell you that who does that. But again, even if you pursue somebody in that regard without even knowing, you just see somebody running, you start running after them, and then they turn and then threw a gun at you. If they threw a gun at you, now let them now tell us how many bullets were left in that gun. That gun magazine only had those 3 bullets that he fired at the police. But even though the military said he was firing at the military witnesses, now how many bullets came out of that magazine? Because if he actually threw, the entire gun at this particular person, that means they got the entire gun, including the magazine. So they should be able to tell how many bullets came out of the magazine, and of course, how many bullets are pending. That will be a monkey. Imagine doing a ballistic examination that has no date, and the ballistic examiner could not tell when he did the ballistic examination. And of course, this report was submitted as a tangible, piece of evidence, from the Gambia Armed Forces, an entire military of an entire country, that you could submit one of the most disgusting documents that is filled with lies, manipulation, and deceit if you really know nothing about the killing of the cops. Why would you do that? So that is why we got to focus on the army. We cannot really look at it and then say, oh, it's all about the police. The police came out to do all the lies and try to do damage control, but that did not work. But the army has its people present at the killing of the cops, who came out to say that they got battle shock, but at the same time were pursuing the gunman. They were probably running after the gunman to make sure that he fully escaped. Because that is the only assumption that somebody could put in here. There are 2 things. You either were the people who killed the cops, or the person who killed them got you people as cover. And then it happened within the vicinity of the residence of the, chief of defense staff. And it is the chief of the defense staff that the police would have written to for them to have the ballistic examination. And the ballistic examination came out to be filled with lies, deceit, and manipulation. So why would the army actually subject itself to such manipulation, lies, and deceit? This is something that we got to ask. So the credibility of the Gambia Armed Forces is now put to question. And I challenge the army to validate its ballistic examination, and of course to tell us how credible these 3 military officers are who came to court to lie, and of course to, in a way, even put in the minds of the people that they are potential perpetrators. We challenge the army to actually tell us how credible the ballistic examination is. And we challenge the army to tell us how valid, that report was. And we equally challenge the army to tell us about the credibility of its 3 witnesses who claim that the incident happened in their presence and they were pursuing the gunman, and all the lies and their narrations that nobody, even the dumbest person in society, cannot wrap their head over. The army, the state intelligence, the police, the office of the president, the National Security Council, you people got to tell us who killed the cops. Because beyond reasonable doubt, we have proven to you that Ousainou Bojang did not go to Sukuta traffic light. He did not kill anybody. He is not a rebel. He does not work in Brikama Area Council. He was not hired to kill. Nobody paid him to kill anybody. The shoes did not fit and they did not belong to him. He did not confess to killing anybody. Your so-called lost audio, we brought it to you in court and you vehemently try to condemn its admissibility. That speaks to only one thing: complicity. And that includes the Ministry of Justice, one of the most disgusting institutions in the Gambia. If you want to prosecute somebody, more so when it has to do with the state, the police will do their investigation, and upon their investigation, they would seek opinions from the Ministry of Justice. I would believe that it is somebody within the Ministry of Justice who would have reviewed these files and, of course, advised the government to go to court. Now, on what basis did you advise the government to go to court? Now, here is what we got to say. They brought you a file, and what was entailed in that file, that actually a lawyer, a sensible person, you don't even need to be a lawyer, who has logic and reason to actually look into that file and accept that it should go to court. Just for the government to be embarrassed, that person needs to be fired from the Ministry of Justice. But everything around it is just kumpulo la. Hamga nyinyi sunyo kumpulo si bon sohor. Aklo hamantele ludul dega. At the end of the day, truth would come out. Because for the police to investigate this matter, which they did not do, because that was not an investigation, that was a deliberate attempt of framing. And that is why we will pursue this case to the last minute. And at the end of this case, we will make sure that we sue the government of the Gambia and individuals. Among them, there is it's not need to actually start mentioning some of you, because some of you, we would definitely prosecute you. We would make sure that we actually, battle it out with you in courts because of your utterances and, of course, your complicity in the whole matter and, of course, your lies against young people who did you no wrong. Mama Jabi nata control yoko atemang korota, but an audit report came out that indicated that Mama Jabi was giving 1 million. Now, on what basis did you give Mama Jabi 1 million? Ning ayata rako police loko itolla codes nyol wale usino muta. Now, atolla codes nyol le usino muta munebe 1 million wasila Mama la, because wala nyente ko Mama la audio did not lead you to the arrest of this young man. It is your military codes or your police codes. Now, because of your codes is the reason why you arrested this person. Why then would you give Mama 1 million who claimed that the person confessed to her? But again, let's say the codes are all lies, which we know because some of the codes you mentioned are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So how on earth did Ousainou go into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, came back and went to Sukuta traffic light, killed cops and went to Dimbaya, went to Sifo, and all of a sudden find himself, in a garage in Jululong? It was the same government that told us that, people who actually, he are called his co-conspirators got him an escape vehicle into the thick forest of Kazama just for the police codes to tell us that at some point he was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You think people are dumb? That I never even know that intelligence in the Gambia is that expensive. I did not know that the police could actually go this low. But even as much as I am disappointed in the police and the way they handled this case, the military is not entirely innocent in it, because its 3 military witnesses must be checked. And the military has a right and a responsibility to make sure that these folks are checked. Not only the 3 witnesses, but as well, the military leadership and the ballistic examiner, who claims to be a major in rank. Wala mo kulte Minnesota. Nyimbanko kanno ibuka kuoku ke mola. Ya fanyadu bol dabal ya lekang. ye mo kotengol nyine pol wole na wole ke witness wolte pour ko wuli ya sembentu ya ye murum kotenge jojo ta min ya lon ko be o batara ya sembentu ya e siete muta ye sorongo batara ya no tilimbali ya kono ila mol ye bono yela dimbaya tora out of their own wickedness. Imagine Ami who is struggling to keep her family in check. Just to keep her family together. Again, she's struggling with her asthma. Aliyo omuta wuliakang, faniakang, tilimbaliakang, aliya sorom for sunkare saba. 1, 2, 3 Ramadans that you cannot even spend with your family. Again, a lactating mother whose child, when they bring the little one to the prisons, she cannot even tell if this is the mother. Because do you know this person? No. And this is what you want the entire country to be silent over. We will not. And we will defend this homie through the thick and thin. And of course, the Gambia government knows who killed the cops. Because if you do not know who killed the cops, Sankare had no right to lie. For him to be subpoenaed to court and just to say that he relied on what the police told him. And he was asked, which police told you? He said the police. Police had over 10,000 people. You want to tell me that every person in the police told you what you said? No, it must be somebody. But Sankare, out of his lies, deceit, and manipulation, could not tell who told him all the lies he had said on that radio. And that is why when I see some people say to me, oh no, you should not say this to that person, you should not say this to this particular radio owner. If your radio is used to lie against our homie and brother, we don't care what you are, who you are, or where you come from. That doesn't matter to me. Because at the end of the day, the truth is older than all of us, and the truth is more powerful than all of us, irrespective of what you think you are, who you think you are, where you think you come from. It doesn't matter to me. Because what matters is making sure that there is accountability, there is transparency, and there is justice. And the delivery of justice cannot be, people who criminally connive to be the ones to deliver justice. How can criminals be the persons in charge of our justice system? So these are things that our people must understand, that this government is hell-bent on lying against young people who did them no wrong. Because even your cover-ups did not make any sense. Because again, come to think of it, every gun that the police force ever got from criminals or people suspected of committing crime, they actually take photos of it and actually put it out there on their Facebook and social media and of course press conferences. Dobe je fango ni kidolo muta molo bolo ni be kumandiro kela ka ko be press conference. Imagine yo sungol min muta no min ya ko kata arm robbery la kabiri ya wol ni la arm sol muta. They actually place all the arms on a table and call for a press conference. Now armed robbery compared to killing 2 serving police officers in their line of duty and injuring one, which one is actually more dangerous? Dami ya longo e hadima de won la fa. But me along what are soon are messing on la ya motor ya nala kidol be mota ali o kidol landi tabulo ko ali e betandi molbera. But me along ko kido mi ya to la doku la fa ame fa dalil wo dalil kan almo findino almo tandino dolla e kula manta ko ndol nyama ma manke tole olti tol be mambo brikama de atakeno la wanyama asan afu ya atakeno la wanyama. And this is why this question would continue to hurt you when people ask who killed the cops. As basic, as simple as that question is, it continues to hurt you because you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it simply because you are complicit in the killing of the cops. And of course, it is not my responsibility to prove to you beyond reasonable doubt that he did, because you can continue to conceal every traceable evidence, and that is left to you and the families of the people that you killed. But what I do know, and what I know we successfully did, is to prove to you beyond reasonable doubt that Hussein Obojan did not kill the cops, and that you cannot in any way deny. It is an undeniable fact and irrefutable that Hussein Obojan did not go to, Sukuta traffic light and did not kill the cops. Wale atina kabira la prosecutor, a desperate fama la bimi kwa kapa na kobla la nyini, faka na code anim fengole, ka mulbalo suma mina nibe rabai karo la kara kana Hussein sima la suma. Imagine how useless, how stupid, a particular, state prosecutor can be. And this person is actually called the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution. Ita malom fengo mi yalon ke ka mulbalo suma wala pour ka la bayolo kara ita ko bulela jibo ko ita ko kana mole suma wala onyam batara yala soto na nyimbanko ka. But because they know that they've lost every credibility in this case, and the state is completely left naked, that it is complicit in the killing of the cops, and of course it's got to bear the responsibility of the killing of its own men in their line of duty for no reason, simply because they want to satisfy some politicians with an attempt to ban another political party. Katu ning ayatara ko almantra konante ya nin jowyala tilinka UDP la moni yati natolo ba folantolle ko useno be do ko la Brikama area council le moni yati natolo ba folantolle ko useno long the guy in hoodie to UDP la court case moni yati na Sankare will say that, and again DIG so will actually repeat the same statement during their press conference to say that indeed the person claimed that he was at the UDP court case in Banjul, and of course he was there with the gun, and we who grew up with Useno and of course know him from childhood to this day, we know that he is not involved in any politics. He does not do politics for nobody. He's not involved in any shitty thing that has to do with all this political nonsense in the country, and all of a sudden you want to just frame him. So why? That becomes the valid question. Why? But Alamanda Wala, the police leadership, including the head of anti-crime, who went with his men to actually get Usieno from the Senegalese gendarmerie. But again, listen to it again. DIG control yoko. Atela code small. It only will use from one point to another until they got to a point that they know that this is where the suspect is. But where did they get to know where the suspect is? The suspect was handed over to them by the Senegalese gendarmerie. Now, how did the Senegalese gendarmerie know that this person is a criminal? Because he committed no crime in Casamance. Because Mama Jabi and Mimbedia Mukannum were telephone because he knew that a crime was committed in the Gambia, being a big supporter of the regime, of course, and a very close associate to Barrow's family, tried to frame this young man, looking at his vulnerability, and started screaming on top of her voice while the young man is talking about not tubabo. And then later, when the police within the police headquarters transcribed this audio over 3 times, realized that there is no single part of this audio where this young man talked about killing the cops, and they of course sent another police officer who claims to be witness protection officer, something Jaju, who went there trying to even persuade Hussein to agree to the crime. Police olo Gambia jowi asifa be obanko kantana na maje dunia adulato. Ko police o mi yalon ko itemu witness protection officer leti. Itala do ko minti wala ka witness will protect. Itaka moji be abulumadu ngasimadu. Itako ko wala convince ko sondi. Kula mi yalon ko abulumadu ngasimadu ngamanke anyala. You wanted the guy to agree to killing the cops because of what? Because of what? Like, yo, this witness protection officer at the Gambia police headquarters. Even munafala soto la woto. 3 good years. Crime killing on yingalma banno. Sanji sabali wandi dingola mutalia soron tilimbaliaka. Alia wandi ba mutalia soron tilimbaliaka. Out of nothing. They did you no wrong. They committed no crime. They got involved in no politics, but you turn around. You did, the commissioner of, anti-crime. Eko, UDP le arabula police fala. UDP be usene bula la police fala pour mo. No UDP la police wala fala fo bulo tetolla. Ay be usene la bula la. And that connects to only one thing. And it is not coincidence that UDP complain about the excesses of the police, specifically Pate Jallo and Babu Yang, and all of a sudden another Pate Jallo is killed, and it did not stop at just the killing of Pate Jallo. Then the script of the Gambia government turns around to say that the person who did it works in Brikama Area Council, is a member of the United Democratic Party, was in that court case in which UDP was even complaining about, the police officers. So that already speaks to one thing. It's a framed script that was hell-bent on trying to tarnish the image of the United Democratic Party. When it failed to do so, it looked for a cover-up to turn around and tell us that the person who killed the cops was paid to kill, and of course his co-conspirators took him to the thick forest of Casamas. But they took him to the thick forest of Casamas. The person you claim is a rebel does not know how to go back to the rebellion, but of course just to go and sit in a garage and start crying. How can a rebel go and sit in a garage and start crying about a white person? How can a rebel actually not know how to get back into the forest in Casamas just to go back to Bruford and sit there, wait until the next day, wait for the sister to come and pick him, and then move from one point to another, and just for your driver to say that they were speaking in Jola all along, and when they got to the part that has to do with the killing of the cops, they spoke in a language that he understood. That is the dumbest testimony I've ever heard in any court proceeding. Manalama malu. Nimalo ka mansa kunda fa tena atola nyimansa kunda fa because malumantambi yesa mato fena ko kare nyin samato la dunka police lo fa e ka mariya ko samato dun samato mankungala e jeki alla mi yalon ko wala fa bo kitinde kan akata karalla la measuring tape o kamana akata kana wasingola mezo fa ka fo mole ko go and bring in a cobbler or a shoemaker to come and determine what fanyala tambira wala but omo kidin fa na ko di as a director of public prosecution itala do ko mo minti wala nyinde ko katilimo nin to nya sabatende nimmo mi crime ke ya tandi ko karla yake bar nim mim fana make ya bulaita bareta man danka ko mim make ya bulaita, but you were part of the framing, and of course you were part of the people who were criminally conniving to make sure that you lie against this young man by telling that the mama's audio that you people claim was an incriminating audio is lost. So why will the DPP lie? The police lied. The 3 army officers lied. The army ballistic examiner lied. The national security advisor lied. Mama Jabi lied. All their 13 witnesses except one all lied. Even their independent witness lied. Sunkara killing. Fulla Saba. Atol katol besunal ale atol la sungula muda. Wato alam ngalaman alabora alla suwala kona wato. But this is a country where people believe that they are religious people, and of course they believe in the truth and they defend nothing but the truth. But they are seeing outright injustice, and nobody across all religious denominations there opens a lid to say something is fundamentally wrong in this country. Nobody dares to say that. So when you people see other people do their stuff and you want to go and tell them what they got to do with their lives, you got to shut it up and of course mind your business, because you don't own people. If you cannot defend the truth at the time of truth, then you cannot tell people what they got to do with their lives, because you don't believe in what you actually try to preach to people. Because you people, some of you don't believe in the truth, because omo kilingol mini alon ko nyabe tapaliani tilimbaliani jowyala nyumbanko kan will not open a lid. When I look at people, some of them, they even call them scholars, telling us that going into 2026 election is just going to be like, penalty without a goalkeeper. But in they said they are actually there to safeguard religion and morality in our society. But they are out there telling us that the person who is going to lead into 2026 is one of the most, morally backward persons in our country. Very untruthful personality, and of course has depicted any recklessness when it comes to morality in our country. Momin kale sanji saba boto wota akota kela ako sanji tanga akota kela ako sanji tanni lulu hanu obe mino ko itolo mu duna dinke wala di tolla to nyani tilongolla wol mi yalon ko kana ka fania fo Gambian ko le puri toli nyaton ko ay ko itolo be wala no mai tolo be wala support kan and itolo ko itolo mu to nya fa sala. So before you start judging other people, even telling people what they do bad, my brother, reflect and look inwardly and look at yourself. These are the difficult conversations that you don't want people to talk about, but we go and talk about them because we don't care what you think about us. Because at the end of the day, dunia akunduta manta moni mobukati ila kabrokono, and then nobody owns any other person. At the end of the day, whatever you do is on you. But we will not watch an entire country silence over the killing of the cops and of course the false and of course lies on innocent people that are incarcerated for almost 3 good years. Always soon, always sallal nala dimbal ko one dingol always soon never sallal the token. But nobody dares open a lid and tell the government that what you are doing is wrong. Bara nyuma sakunda killing ole fanya sifa be fontole. Bara wol mini yo fanya la fonyal ko hani wolla mun tonya moloti. and then you come back to my society. You know, one thing about me is that growing up, I had nothing to do with a lot of people. I mind my business. But what I believe in is what I believe in, and nobody can change that. I've heard a lot of things, even when NPP jumped and sent me a lot of insults on Facebook. People that you think are either close to your family members would be screenshotting it and sending it to your family members. And I wonder what you want to gain from that, because the whole point is that if you see somebody send me an insult simply because I asked who killed the cops, what is your business in screenshotting that and probably sending it to somebody? Or you think you send that to a parent or you send that to a close family, they're going to tell me to stop? I'm never going to stop. I'm not that person who basically stopped because somebody thinks about, you know, what the ramifications of that is going to be. No. I take full responsibility of my own actions. And I don't really put other people in my business, because if I get in trouble, it's me. I don't want to bother nobody. Then the essence of showing up in the face of injustice is cruelty. And this is what most of us are guilty of. Ning ayata roko ita min fanga aboy nyaka sinyina ni balo mo ne ba fala mo lire nyaka sa. Ni dolong wo useno ti ba fala mo lire nyaka sa. Ni kotolong amite ba fala mo lire nyaka sa. Ni musulom amite ba fala mo lire nyaka sa. Ni dinnom useno ti ba fala mo lire nyaka sa. When in reality, you know that something is fundamentally flawed in this whole process. But because of your political, you know, self-styled, you know, protection, whatever, you want people not to talk about it. Oh yeah, but you probably are aged. This is the best moment to put yourself on a career path, but you spend all those moments in jail for things you know nothing about, and then the rest of the people will be like, oh no, shut up, don't mind it, just let it slide. They are just self-protectionists. They don't care about when the next person dies, because Gambia lebo nyama, dami yalonko, even in the former regime, it's people who will go and lie against other people, and they go and bring other people to come and serve as witnesses to something that they know nothing about, just to make sure that they run that single narrative, prosecution and incarceration. The criminal justice system of this country is one of the most tasteless, proceedings that one could actually be exposed to. The Ministry of Justice is there to make sure that there is justice among all people. Nimmi kuriyake ya tamande silola. But nimmi manku fanange ya tandi ko tonya defentan tolobul against this person. But for that same ministry to be part of the gang of criminals who actually connive, lie, and deceitfully come to court, try to incarcerate young people, and of course their lactating sisters who did no wrong, that is beyond human comprehension. But I'm not surprised. Because who are the people involved? Because that is why when you look at even the legal fraternity in the Gambia, you look at the General Legal Council, you look at the personnel who are actually in there, and then you also look at the Supreme Court. How can members of the Supreme Court be actually part of the General Legal Council? And then of course the members of the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court, actually serves as an oversight to the General Legal Council. So how is that not even conflict of interest? The judiciary and of course the justice system in itself is just complete garbage. Gambia court. Aniana dunia fanga bela transe bula jallahu alam. Kato ngala no ko tilingo nin tonya teje tapaliani nakaro ka bara wala mo kurungol ni mo tilimbalo lebes farinje. More so the Ministry of Justice is saturated with the most incompetent people in that country. Well, at in a model you wonder how those people go to law school and how they actually pass bar exams. Because new world is safeno ke Facebook, wala buka hani just ordinary status, wala buka sentence correct mo fanga safeno. Wala be more defend no la nyadi. Or how can those people even prosecute somebody when you cannot write a basic sentence that even makes sense to ordinary Gambian? How can you actually go to court and of course defend a particular case when you don't know nothing? Ni avo eko kare jututa kare nyol la bare mo kalamta ngol be farinje tep, bara mo kalamta balol be farinje tep. That is why all this Gambia is like a safe haven for drug lords. More kendol also modali also more kurungol you glorify them and of course even kind of deal with them to actually commit crimes. But like I said, this is the last time I'm probably talking about this matter, because we know, beyond reasonable doubt, that when they started lying to the public about this young man, trying to, paint a particular image about him, we vehemently came out and stood, in defense of this young man for the entire 2 years. And I know nobody except the criminal-minded and, of course, the regime apologist would still tell us that, oh, no, maybe it's him. That is nothing like maybe. It's him or not him. And it's very clear to you and your conscience that, of course, Ousseynou had nothing to do with the killing of the cops. And it's everything that now points fingers to the regime. And, of course, because of their own lies, their own scripts, and their own manipulative statements they've made to the public. So, you know, I'm remember soldering. Ale wande dingol soron sanje fula sanje sabasilang. But the judgment would basically come out in a week. Oh, not in a week. Like, they will get back to court in probably a week or two. Now, by the time they're done with that, of course, the judgment will come out. Whatever that is, Allahu alam. But is to completely come out here and to make sure that every lie that they're putting on this young man is successfully debunked. And we did that. We put in our time, we put in our resources, we put in our energy as it is required of your neighbor and, of course, your brother in the hood, and, of course, somebody you know, and you know that tonya ale along kila along manke rebelo ta manke mo fala tanda manke mo kurunti. So Ibu Sow, Commissioner Sow, DIG Sow, Pate Jallo, that Minister of Interior Sanyang, and all those people, many alonko, alia alonneko. In one way or another, you people know what exactly happened in this case. Someday, somehow, justice will be served. One thing I do know is it's not about someday, somehow, because the people that if they want to let you people go, that's left to you and them. That's not my business. But it is our responsibility to make sure that we debunk every lie you put on this young man. And evidently and clearly, you all know that, of course, that you had nothing in this case. Now, no person would tell me a single point of evidence that the government had put in to say this is an evidence that Ousseynou Bojang did kill him. They could not even establish that he was at the crime scene. They could not. Everything they were doing is to hide from one point to another. Oh, where is the gun? Let's take it to a DNA. No, it cannot be subjected to DNA. Oh, where is the CCTV footages within that vicinity? Oh, they are nowhere to be seen. Oh, the shoes, they did not feed in court. Oh, what was the clothing? Oh, we don't know the clothing of the person. Oh, the gun. Oh, we did not say we recovered the gun. He was paid the money. Oh, where is the money? Oh, we said we recovered part of the money, but no money was seen. Oh, he works in Brikama area council, Abefania. But and when you look at it politically, wala nang ko political dobe jahana ba nungal nga domon nyofe, because eke fon fa mi bi sam wala bala fila fon ke da fon fa kar nyimbe ke da woldi. Adama Barrow in 2016 was the least qualified among all the applicants, but UDP made sure that they did everything humanly possible to make sure that Adama became the flag bearer. But the same Adama's government now turned around to even, try to frame the UDP in the killing of the cops. Even if I am not a member of a particular political party, let alone the party that brought me to power, no matter my differences with those people, I will not go to a point that my regime will be the one to try to frame those people in the killing of the cops. Now that everybody is now even thinking, if it is not the government that killed the cops to frame the United Democratic Party. UDP went to court and, of course, the police were beating their people. Why would you think that they don't have a right to say that we will revenge? Or why do you think they don't have a right to say that what the police were doing is police brutality and it is bad to be done? Of course, why do you not think that it was right for them to tell Pate Jallo, hey, adomon na molfe? And just for another Pate Jallo to be killed, and you, the regime apologists, want to make it look like that's a coincidence? But yet the government tried to tell us that it is the UDP. And then they went on to catch Ousseynou Bojang, who had nothing to do with it, and turn around and tell us that he's a member of the UDP. How laughable is that? So this is getting to an hour mark. I don't intend to stay here that long. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been almost over 2 years, 2.5 years of constantly being on the side time, focus on some other things and get on with life and all of that. The young man would have known that we did all we could to actually make sure that, Tilongon into Sabati in the case, because all we got is Brookwood, man. We got nowhere else. Now, the whole point for me is not about, is this your close associate or not, because at the end of the day, it's our hood. We can't look our homies getting jailed for no good reason and you expect people from the hood to shut up on that. We can't do that. Even though a lot of people would turn around and say, boy, no, in the same community. But that tells you a lot about people and their political desires who hate the truth simply because of their own selfish interests. But that does not bother us, because the most important thing is your ability to speak the truth, even when it is not desirable to do so. Because does it bother me? No. It doesn't take anything from me. It doesn't add anything to me. But my conscience is clear that I was able to, among all other people who felt there was a need to speak the truth when it is, probably not the best moment to do so, to make sure that this young man is defended. And of course, the truth actually comes out. Not really to defend a criminal, but of course to defend somebody we know he's not a rebel, who does not work in Brikama Area Council, who has no business whatsoever to kill the cops, who was not surveillancing no paramilitary bases for a whole 1 week, who was not paid to kill, who did not actually own any combat boot, for all those lies to be that the government actually put all those manipulations. So wala atin nanin tanga funding kel dole jibe bo wurla jay masa ko nang masa kunda do ko wal sulta wala alta do ko nyini je kado Gambia moli alo nako tonya silang if you don't turn yourself into a griot, you probably will not get a good job, because that is how we have reduced this country to. So go and do that griot thing and get the job, because it's important for you and your family. If I need to do that to get a job, I'm not sure I'm ever going to need to do that in any way in my life. I wouldn't do that. But if you need to do it and that is what is important for you, go do it. But when we choose to speak our minds and, of course, speak consciously on matters that relate to the country, just shut up and mind your business. Because if you come to confront us in that light, we would definitely face up with most of you. I've seen some of you who actually would even say, oh, why would you ask who killed the cops? No. Ni fala soron no ita nyinin kala wala, ni dola soron no ita nyinin kala wala, ni musula soron no ita nyinin kala wala. So if it is other people, nangasi mando. And that is why we did say that today's focus was basically on the army. And of course, we want to question the credibility of the 3 army witnesses. And of course, look into the, the validity of the ballistic examination report that the army put out, where the 3 military witnesses there to protect the murderer and make sure that he escapes at all costs? Or was it a coincidence that they were just there when this incident happened and they matched the characteristics of a killer? Was it just a coincidence that the vehicle belonging to a police officer who owns a gun was the one that everybody said belongs to the shooter? At that time. So mone atolo bula ka nyimuli ya sifa bela wane dongo ka miyalon ka bulu madon asimaldo. Sa mo buka fo moy ko janil lakirati. You will go to court with this young man after this case, and of course we will make sure that the right things are done. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. I Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. Azan, yeah, no problem. Just send me a message on the low, and then we will fix that. No problem. But anyway, probably the last time we're having this, I do know the young man is doing all right. We're trying to make sure that, whatever it takes is done. And because it might be the last time I'm saying this, I want to be very, commend Lamin J. Dabo, Lamin J. Dabo, not only did he defend this other man who was, I think the guy misspoke, the guy who was talking about APRC Bureau and all of that, something Sanyang, but of course, you have to provide evidence that before you actually, but of course that tells a lot about anger in government. They are just angry people, a bunch of angry people who have, government to run. And then at the end of the day, you don't even know what they believe in. But that's just it, and that's basically what we wanted to say. At the end of the day, you've destroyed this young man's reputation. You've destroyed his youthful, a whole 3-year period in jail at at your youthful period where you definitely need to realize your full potential. So probably, to get out of jail and probably try to get to self-actualization would be something very difficult. But it tells a lot about our society. So that's why whatever one does, try to be very careful the kind of people you're dealing with, because Gambia lo mo banku fanantialo, So bari ngal tendungal jay man, Waibu. But anyway, thank you very much, man. You all have a wonderful evening.